Hello there and welcome back to Mudwalkers. My name is Chris. If you're new to the channel, check out the links in the description down below, etc., etc. And so let's get right into it. Recently, I've been thinking a lot about nakedness and modesty, as you might imagine. It's kind of what the whole channel's about. And I've come to a very interesting question, for textiles specifically. The question is this: if I were to give you a diagram of the human body, male and female, and I asked you to mark it up to show the basics of modesty, what would you mark and why? But before you get too carried away, there's one rule. Every line you draw has to be supported by a reference to scripture, i.e. a Bible verse. That's right. If you're going to set universal standards for all mankind, then you had better be able to back that up from scripture. I mean, otherwise this would be a Romans 14 issue, right? Now, me personally, if I was going to fill one of these out, I would just leave it blank. Because there are no rules in the Bible about what you have to cover or why. So naturism is really a Romans 14 issue about one's own conscience rather than, these grand cosmic ideas of morality. It's all about what's best for you. Now, ultimately, I think that naturism is best for everyone. It's right there in Genesis chapter 2, that this is just how human beings were created. We were created naked and unashamed, made in the image of God. We were declared exceedingly good, abundantly good on the sixth day of creation. So I think that naturism is for everybody, but not everybody is ready for naturism. So that's why it's a Romans 14 issue, because you can't just jump into this. Your conscience has to already be there. Now, just for kicks, let's look at some of the most popular verses used to support conventional modesty, and we'll see if they support the lines that we're looking at here. But before we do that, let's thank my supporters over on Patreon. All right, quick detour. Look at the size of this moth. Look at that. This is my hand for reference. I thought it was a bird. I thought it was a sparrow or something. At first I thought it was a hummingbird, then I was like, no, the wings are not flapping fast enough to be a hummingbird, it must be a small sparrow. Nope, turns out it was an insect. Look at the lines on this thing, huh? The grandeur and design that goes into one single insect. Just look at those eyes. What a great God. Look at that. The engineering that went into this thing is far beyond anything that human beings have ever produced, including spaceships, iPhones, supercomputers. Just incredible. Anyway, this episode of Mudwalkers is brought to you by Patreon. These guys are making the channel possible. They're keeping my work sustainable. I truly believe that what I'm doing here on Mudwalkers is worth doing. It's worth proclaiming. It's worth getting out there into American culture and really human culture in general, human society, humanity itself. I think naturism is a great thing that we should be promoting, especially as Christians. Like I said, we're made in the image of God. And what a great God He is, and what great beings we get to be as humans. And so the idea that someone would be condemned for appearing human, i.e. naked, just is mind-boggling to me. Anyway, on Patreon you get certain perks based on the tier that you sign up for at the $10 level, and above you get access to a monthly video call with me and the other patrons. All my patrons get early access to all my videos. If you go to the super high tiers, you get extra benefits on top of those, like a personalized thank you video from me. And in general, just, yeah, if you're interested at all in supporting what I do, check out Patreon. It's in the link tree in the description down below. All my social media is actually down there. If I go on any longer, I'll be rambling, so let's get back to the video. Okay, the scripture passages that we'll be looking at are Genesis chapter 3 and 1 Timothy chapter 2. These are really the ones that have the greatest oomph in the argument against naturism and for conventional modesty. I actually have entire videos covering these videos. Here's my link to the video on Genesis chapter 3 right here, where I go into this more fully. But for the purposes of this video, we're going to take a very, very bird's eye view look at this, maybe even orbital view of the chapter in order to go over, the whole modesty lines on the diagram thing. So there are really just two important verses in Genesis chapter 3. Those would be verses 8 and 21. In verse 8, this is right after Adam and Eve eat the fruit, and it says, "The eyes of them both were opened, and they knew that they were naked." Okay, very interesting, but you may notice, especially if you're a naturist, you may notice that there's something glaringly absent from this verse. That would be a rule. There's no rule in the verse. This is a story about an introspective experience that two particular people had on one particular occasion, but there's nothing in the verse that actually tells us whether or not we should emulate this behavior, or whether this behavior is mandatory for all humans. It just says that this is what they did. So, yeah, there's no verse there, so that verse can't be used to support conventional modesty because it's just a story, not a rule. All right, verse 21, another interesting verse. Let's take a look. In verse 21, Yahweh is banishing Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden, but as he's doing that, Yahweh takes some time to make some clothes out of animal skins, and he gives these to Adam and Eve. Okay, you probably know what I'm about to say. Say it with me. There's no rule in this verse. I love you guys. So yes, this verse is a story about a very kind gesture that Yahweh extended to Adam and Eve, Adam and Hava. But there's nothing in the verse that tells us whether or not these clothes were mandatory for Adam and Eve, let alone the rest of the human race. And on top of that, the verse doesn't do anything to describe the garments here or their extent or what exactly their purpose was. It just goes on and on. There are multiple problems with taking this verse to support conventional modesty. It just isn't there. Okay, 1 Timothy chapter 2 comes next. I have a whole video about this verse. It goes into more depth up here. Be sure to check that one out if you are interested. This verse is a bit longer and I'm less familiar with it, so let's read it here. Okay. Paul writes, "Women should adorn themselves in respectable apparel with modesty and self-control, not with braided hair and gold or pearls or costly attire, but with what is proper for women who profess godliness with good works." All right, so what's Paul's contrast here? Skin exposure versus skin coverage? Lust versus purity? No, it's ostentation versus simplicity and good works. So there you have it, textiles. I have narrowed down your search box in the Bible. I have already eliminated some possibilities for you, which, shortens your research time for this project if you are interested in doing this project. Feel free to screenshot this and, print it out and, draw the lines on there, color them in if you want to. You can even draw little t-shirts on them and all that stuff. But make sure you draw a diagram that includes scripture verses. Any line on there not supported by a scripture verse, I will take to be your opinion and not a matter of scripture or universal morality. And some people have come back to me before and said, well, Chris, it depends upon the context. What is proper to wear. Like, sure, a man can be shirtless at a pool, but he's at a pool. But if you're going to be like at a Bible study, the man really should wear a shirt. It's just the right thing to do. That's the moral thing to do. He has to wear a shirt in the Bible study for moral reasons, even though at the pool, that's a different context. So on and on it goes. But if you're one of these people who wants to focus on context and distinguish between contexts in the morality of skin exposure, then by all means, copy and paste your screenshot of the diagram and fill it out multiple times for different contexts. I would love to see those as well. Add scriptures to those as well. If there is indeed a biblical reason that you have to wear something different in a religious context versus a casual context in general as human beings across the species, then by all means, show me that in the text and draw those lines of a diagram and I'll consider it. And if you're a Christian textile watching this, don't hesitate on my account to send this diagram to textiles. Your friends, your family, your pastors, deacons, elders, priests, whatever it is you have in your life of Christian textiles telling you that naturism is wrong, send them this diagram and ask the person, hey, you just draw some lines and add scripture verses and we'll see what you come up with. Now, if that doesn't fit your situation, then great. Doesn't fit your situation. Do something else or do nothing at all. That's up to you. But if you find the diagram interesting, you think the person will be interested as well, and you think that the the diagram could produce fruitful dialogue, then by all means use the diagram. I'm very, very interested to see what people make of this diagram and the results that we get back. If you're a textile or a naturist, regardless, if you or someone that you know has filled out this diagram, send it to me. Okay, my social media is in the link down below. You can get in touch with me down there, and I'll figure out a way to get the diagram back from you. We'll figure that out. We'll probably connect on one of my social media, and I'll give you my email address, and it'll be just fine like that. Although, if you send it to me on X, formerly known as Twitter, I like it as Twitter still, send it to me on X, Instagram, or Facebook. Those will probably get me the image in decent resolution that I'll be able to read your notes on the diagram anyway, so yeah, that's that. And I doubt anyone's actually going to send me back a diagram. I highly, highly doubt that anyone will send one of those to me, but hey, we'll see. It's a very interesting question. We'll see how it goes. That's it for this video. I will see you in the next one. Don't get carried away just yet. There's a single... There's a single... Wow, that's a very interesting concept. Super philosophical. That's right, this video has been brought to you by my supporters on... My supporters on... Another great philosophical thing. Yes, wonderful.